Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
Welcome into the Savage Nation. I am Michael Del Giorno from our nation's Music City, Nashville, Tennessee. Honored, as always, to fill in for Dr. Savage. Our phone number throughout the show, 855-400-7282, 855-400-SAVAGE. Dr. Savage will be back tomorrow. And, of course, as always, remember you can get the latest headlines or sign up or sign into and subscribe to the Savage newsletter. And you can do that at michaelsavage.com. I am thrilled to be here with you today. It is a bit of a journey through symptoms, and I am just not a symptom player. I'm more get right to the cause of illness. If I was a doctor, I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to comfort you on symptoms so much as get to the illness, diagnose it accurately, and heal you. So we got everything from Debbie Wasserman Schultz questioning Donald Trump Jr. of collusion. You got Representative Adam Schiff saying he's violated his oath of citizenship. You've got Representative Brad Sherman filing the first article of impeachment. Why, he's leading a posse of one. And you got to go to the Senate, right? For Democratic Senator Blumenthal, and it's a violation of the Espionage Act. Now, why? You know, I said for a long time to my local audience, and I'll reiterate it to you. This is going to play out one of two ways. There's going to be a great discrediting of journalism and journalists, and a great falling out of listenership and viewership to media, or there's going to be a great disconnect with politics and politicians. It's going to play out one of the two ways. Now, we just spent 8 years with Barack Obama, with the president inciting and pitting against each other, blacks and whites and crooks and cops and women and men and gays and transgenders, and has us all divided and fighting with each other. And for a lot of people, and we saw this in the ratings in a way we're not seeing it now, and I don't want to get into ratings analysis. Right now, I don't see television news viewership disappearing. I see it shifting and away from CNN and benefiting MSNBC, which never should have happened, but that's a programming issue. But there is a big difference between what we're experiencing now. What we're experiencing now is a war that we knew was waged, right? That's why we waited till 1:30 in the morning for Donald Trump to accept the presidency, when we knew 9:30 Central. Because a media in its hubris had stacked the deck, fixed the game, told you how to vote, and shockingly, you didn't listen. And I don't know if we waited till 1:30 because of Hillary's physical health, her mental health, or for the media to come to grips with an outcome. And they haven't yet, have they? And so is it a war against Trump? Is it a war against you? Is it all of the above? It is and I think Robert and everybody back in Dallas would agree. Looking over the top stories of the day, listening to the sound bites of the day, I think everybody's watching too much freaking House of Cards. You've gone mad. But there is something about House of Cards I wanted to start with today. If there's any kind of pursuit that we're at least getting the diagnosis correct before we play their game. And I don't know if, and they're not the first show to do this, but I don't know if this ever strikes you uncomfortable as it does me. It's one of my great pet peeves in life. You're sitting watching a fictitious show like House of Cards, and there's Connie Chung. There's Katie Couric. There's Rachel Maddow. There's Brett Baier and some of the other Fox people talking about these fake people. And I look at them and I go, how discrediting. And this is unfair to her, but I got to tell you, it may be because she's the best actor or she's the best actor every night. But Rachel Maddow was the one that sat the most uncomfortable with me. Wailing away at a fictitious character. acting, looking, and performing just as she does every night, supposedly hosting a news talk show. Can you imagine for a moment Walter Cronkite doing that? And isn't that one of the most amazing things about Walter Cronkite? We didn't know how crazy liberal he was till he left. And then you look back at his body of work and you go, well, surely his bias was with him. I got news for you. I don't read anything. I don't do anything. And my Christianity isn't front and center. My worldview isn't front and center. My values aren't front and center. My life experiences aren't front and center. Oh, I'm biased. The only difference is I admit it. Everyone is. You arrive at the scene of the crime or the facts of a story with that worldview, and it impacts everything from your unique way of looking at it to your creativity. So how does bias exist? Stories you cover, stories you don't. Great example of that today. Let's talk about Donald Trump Jr., but let's not talk about the FBI document dump. Let's not talk about the former FBI Director Comey and how the very man investigating a Secretary of State and a presidential candidate playing loose with top secret documents, caught playing loose with top secret documents. So sometimes it's about what we don't want to talk about. And then what we do want to talk about. Sometimes it's the angles we choose and the angles we ignore. Sometimes it's the people we will interview, the people we won't interview, the quotes we will use, the quotes we will not use. Oh, it's all a mosaic of bias. But I said on election night, while Donald Trump is the winner, the big loser, the biggest lasting legacy impact of this election over what was clearly a referendum election. America wanted nothing to do with a career politician, and they wanted an outsider. And it's funny how the Democrats, we're going to have a quote from Wasserman Schultz in a bit, there's a reason she's not the DNC chair anymore. She was the one caught in cahoots with the networks to tip the scales, along with superdelegates, for Hillary over Bernie. They shot themselves in the foot. They'd have been better off with Bernie Sanders, a Marxist outsider, in an outsider referendum election than with Hillary Clinton, the epitome of establishment candidates, let alone a proven liar the people didn't trust. All things forgotten now as the left and the media can't figure out how Trump won. But follow the bouncing ball on this. Imagine Walter Cronkite acting in a movie or a television show, pretending to be Walter Cronkite. He'd have grabbed him, given him a wedgie, and thrown him out in the hallway. Are you kidding me? Frank Reynolds? Walter Cronkite? Edward R. Murrow? What are you, out of your mind? But Rachel Maddow in House of Cards caught my mind and my attention differently. It was so real, I felt like I was watching tonight's show. And I'm like, how could she be that good? I just did a scene in my first movie ever. And let me tell you something, Rachel Maddow is I don't know if I'm supposed to call her an actor or an actress, but she's a natural. And then something much deeper settled in. And it fit like a piece of a puzzle I've been wrestling with. You see, I don't like to play these games every day with the news because it's not real news. And if I play along, I might as well be a part of it, and I'm not going to do it. On my local show today, I talked about the FBI documents. I talked about Comey, not Junior. Because one's fake, one's real. Now, Dr. Savage has a great I told you so today in one of our top stories where if the reports from the inner circles of the White House are accurate, yeah, Trump's fuming mad. Here's more cloud, more distraction. It won't go away, and it's keeping him from doing what he pledged to do. He has a right to be mad. And Michael Savage is right to point out to you, you know what? Sometimes, as long as we understand what is not criminal, but what is a PR nightmare, call it a Hurricane Category 5, as some have today, or a crap storm, or whatever you want to call it, perception has a way of becoming reality. And I go back to the very beginning when Chucky Schumer made it crystal clear during the confirmation hearings. Listen, we're doing a service to the American people. And that service is we're vilifying all the nominees. You're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, I speak English. Vilify is a service? You're not there to vet and confirm. You're there to vilify? To speak or write in an abusively defaming manner? That's your job as a United States Senator? Never mind states' rights and protecting them? Never mind vetting? Never mind confirming? That's what you think is your... And I thought, well, surely he's oversimplifying. And then he completes his statement. Democrats hope we can force a withdrawal here or there, but even if we can't, it's all about laying the groundwork to stymie the Trump administration, stymie the will of the American people, stymie the voice of the American people, stymie the results of an American election. Well, if they would do that, the confirmation, of course what they'll do is cloud with all this inference. And that's what you have. Inference. A case of inference and whisper and guilt by association. You don't have facts. You don't have sources. You don't have real crimes and real scandals, and they don't need them. And they just bring them up. And whether you're defending them or supporting them, you're playing the game. So that's why I don't like to play the game. I like to get beyond the symptom to the actual illness. Now, let me get to that. I don't even know how to explain to people what fake news is. I don't think anybody can. I mean, they have websites now dedicated to that. Can you name what a fake news story is from a real news story? I have a huge advantage to that because I do it for a living. But that isn't what's called fake news, whether it's Trump or the media. Fake news is anything you don't agree with. I don't think our problem is fake news. I think our problem, and we better get it right, is false narratives and fake anchors. That's right. My point of bringing up House of Cards and Rachel Maddow is journalism is dead. That's the long and lasting problem we have in America. Our founding fathers counted on a handful of things. One of them was that you would be a moral people, that you would believe in God and live those beliefs, that you would be a moral people. The other was that you would be an active citizen, that you would be a self-governed, moral, responsible, engaged citizen, whether you were running for office, vetting those who ran for office, or holding them accountable once they were in office. And yeah, they counted on liberty, and they counted on freedom of the press. A journalistic standard that would hold elected officials accountable and informed the active citizenry. So America's got some real proclivities and some real vulnerabilities. We are ignorant. We are immoral. And we're apathetic and uninvolved. Translation, you're surrounded by people duping, and you're dupable. Your problem is false narratives and fake anchors, and I'll continue to prove it, and I got enough examples in today's top stories to continue to prove it all afternoon long, filling in for Michael Savage on the Savage Nation next.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Eight 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. It's the Michael Savage Show on the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno from Nashville, Tennessee, filling in. And I want to be like a good doctor. I want to be the guy that looks you right in the eye and at least tells you what's killing you. And so before I light you up with our 6 or 7 stories du jour, I want you to know before I even bring them up. It's not the latest in media bias. It's not the latest in Trump scandals. It's the latest in an age of no reason. It's the latest in an age of post-death of journalism. Because that's the real problem. And I say that because I want you to know, long after Trump's gone, and he will be 3.5 years from now, 7.5 years from now, eventually he'll be gone. But this will still be our dilemma. This will still be our problem. And so I opened with this example of Rachel Maddow during House of Cards. And I'm like, nobody's that good of an actress. She's acting every night. And isn't that the lesson of the Veritas leaks? Of CNN. These scripts are written. These anchors are actors and actresses. They're not journalists. And you have a right to know what your illness is. I was walking in the hospital with my dad one time, and he was just so jittery, I couldn't help but notice it. I said, Dad, what is your problem? I don't like hospitals. So what do you mean you don't like hospitals? People die here. And I was like, Dad, people get healed here. Miracles happen here. Yeah, well, people die here too. And I always think of that. There's one thing in a hospital that always takes my breath away, and that's that little dreaded room. Little square room. About the only thing smaller than my studio. And there's nothing in it but a little table, 2 chairs, and a box of Kleenex. You don't ever want to go in that room. In Jesus' name, I'm warning you, you don't ever want to be called into that room. Because see, either somebody's already dead or they're dying and they're going to tell you what's causing it. And there's not a doctor in the world that likes to go in that room either, any more than the families that get called into it. But at least I'm going to shoot straight with you. Your terminal illness is not Trump. It's the death of reason, the death of understanding, the death of truth. The Trump symptom, it's going to pass like a common cold. 7.5 years at the most. But no journalism, no conscience of fact, no sourcing of truth, no credibility, no understanding of fact from actors carrying out agendas and scripts. How do we ever correct or heal from that? Regardless of who holds office. That's our real problem. Our other problem is you, us, me. We got to know the truth. Or how are we going to recognize a lie? You got to value facts and evidence so that you can rule out inference. Now, 30 to 40% are believing these lies. 50 to 60% are not believing them and thinks the media is waging a creditless war. But the problem is we're all ingesting it. Now, the great example is you all know it's on the pack of that cigarettes. From heart disease to cancer to pregnancy issues. But if you're still smoking, it doesn't matter if you know the warnings or don't know the warnings. If you're still ingesting it, you're still going to get cancer. That's why it's dangerous to play this game. I'll play it a little bit, but not without making sure you understand the difference between symptom and true disease. Next on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Welcome back into the Savage Nation, and so great to be with you from Music City, USA, Nashville. I'm Michael Del Giorno, honored as always to be filling in for Dr. Savage. He'll be back tomorrow. If you want to get the latest headlines or subscribe to the Savage Nation newsletter, I highly recommend it. MichaelSavage.com is the place, and don't forget to pick up a copy of his war. It's more important than ever to read this book, Trump's War, His Battle for America. Now, here's my thesis. I'm going to get into all the nonsense, from Wasserman Schultz to Adam Schiff to, I got them all today. And they're going to all be accusing the president of everything you can imagine, from violating his son and his namesake. That was my favorite. Violating his citizenship, treason, Espionage Act. But the reason I don't like to play this game is because I have read the Espionage Act, and this is not espionage. In fact, Hillary should worry more about that law. This is not collusion or proof of collusion. And there's certainly nothing they did that others haven't done. When I say others, I mean I go all the way back to Ted Kennedy, twice, reaching out to the Soviet Union before elections, or Barack Obama in 2012. Did everybody forget how he leaned over to Dmitry Medvedev and said, hey, after my election, I'll be a lot more flexible? The hell was that? Or how about Bill Clinton on a tarmac with the Attorney General? I mean, it's amazing how we'll play this game on one side but ignore the other. But I don't even want to play that game. Listen, what we're dealing with is false narratives, not fake news. The only fake we're dealing with, false narratives and fake anchors. Not objective reporting. This isn't fact-based. This isn't source-based. This isn't Woodward and Bernstein stuff. You got actors, not anchors, not objective reporters, not journalists. It's dead. And they're reading scripts that nobody knows who they were or what they wrote, all filled with inference, and then they sit around with analysts and guest analysts and kick it around as if it's fact. And in a whisper, you're creating scandals. Do you know what we used to call this in the Bible? Gossip! But I digress. Let me start with an example, because all my examples will prove this. And before I get to today's numbskulls and losers of the day, let's start with David Letterman. David Letterman has teamed up with Al Franken. He should have stuck to Stuart Smalley. And they're tackling climate change. The pair recruited Funny or Die team, an Emmy Award-winning Years of Living Dangerously crew, and they recorded conversations. But in them, and they mostly talk a lot, about everything from coal to Letterman's beard. But Letterman pipes in about Donald Trump. Let's just stop whining about what a goon he is and figure out a way to take him aside and put him in a home. Nothing inciting there. Asked whether he wishes he could come out of retirement and return to the late-night TV speak out against Trump, which, by the way, if Megyn Kelly hasn't learned the lesson that news is dead on the major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, I hope David Letterman has learned the lesson. It's dead with late-night credibility as well. The days where young people are turning to Letterman or The Daily Show or to Colbert for their politics, that's over too. You're about 8 years behind. And my question today and thesis is, how are we all going to live now that journalism's dead? You got a real problem. If facts don't matter and there is no truth, the heck's wrong. How do we vet anybody? So you got an ignorant, apathetic American people, immoral, disconnected, unwise, dupable, being duped daily by actors reading teleprompters. But watch where Letterman goes with this. Here's what I keep saying. We know there's something wrong. Really, what? I wish somebody would have interrupted him. What's wrong? He's just allowed to keep going. Oh, we all know something's wrong. But what I'm tired of is people daily, nightly, all over cable news shows telling us there's something wrong. I just think we ought to direct our resources and our energies to do something about it. Other people have made the point, if this guy was running Dairy Queen, he'd be gone. Really? Dairy Queen? Letterman concludes, this guy, he's talking about the President of the United States, the office of the presidency, the executive over one of our three branches of government in our republic. This guy couldn't work at Gap. So why do we have to be victimized by his fecklessness? Don't you love to get feckless lessons from David Letterman? I mean, if he wants to stop and explain narcissism or malcontentism, I'm all ears. Does anybody in the courtroom of public opinion or otherwise want to have a debate over whether or not Donald Trump has initiative, character, follow-through, and success? But I'll play his stupid game. This guy couldn't work at Gap. Why are we victimized by his fecklessness, his ignorance? It's just the behavior is insulting to Americans. Here's how David Letterman concludes. Whether you voted for him or not, and I really feel bad for the people who did vote for him. Yeah, because he wouldn't know any of them. Like 3 guys got together, and that's how he became president. I don't know who those 3 guys are. I feel the hell sorry for him, but I feel bad for those people who did vote for him. He promised them things that they really need, and one wonders if he's ever really going to come through. And I'm thinking to myself, bigger than a giraffe. A, would David Letterman, Al Franken, or any of these other morons, actors, teleprompter readers, would they have ever asked these questions of Barack Obama? Because they didn't for 8 years. I was watching and listening. You might want to ask the question where their hope and change is. I'd love to hear that answers. I'd like to know how many African Americans listening to the Michael Savage show right now are wondering where your hope and change is. Do you really think race relations in America are better after 8 years of that insider? Do you think the poor are wondering? Where their opportunity went, their change, their hope. What the hell do they have to show for 8 years of that moron? And I look at this and I go, are you kidding me, Donald Trump? You're worried about Donald Trump delivering what he promised? He's already cut regulations. That was creating all the uncertainty. That was making business entrepreneurship impossible. He tried to repeal and replace Obamacare, but that's a legislative issue. And the Republicans have certainly, by not choosing to first kill it, got to kill something before you can bring it back to life. But that isn't his failure of initiative or effort. He said he'd destroy ISIS. Anybody read the news in Kabul? Running with their ass on fire. Securing the borders, but then it got, challenged. The travel ban. We had to go all the way to the Supreme Court just to get the travel ban in place. He's going to meet with Mexico. He's going to build that border wall, and he's going to make every effort to make sure they pay for it. And he'll get around to cutting taxes if the Republicans can ever, in control, lead the repeal of Obamacare. We can get on to that. I think he's taken a lot of initiative in the first few hundred days. I do want to defend the president. And his only failures have been legislative and congressional and the clouds of these distractions. But he's not creating the distractions. The media is. I was listening to CNN the other day, driving to work. It was laughable. Well, I don't know if any of this is breaking of any laws, but it's certainly a continued disturbing trend that you've created. You never have a source. You never have a fact. You never have a broken law. It's all inference. It's all just, you're going to keep coming at us with this every day until we get so sick of it, we're willing to get rid of Trump with you. I know the game they're playing. And history says if they consistently and persistently play it long enough, it'll work. But I'm looking at David Letterman and I'm saying, you moron. This guy's done more in 200 and something days than Obama delivered in 8 years. And I understand that you don't appreciate what I'm looking for versus what you were looking for in Obama, but at least ask both of them the same questions. Because you're going to see this pattern throughout the show today. None of it's based in reality. None of it's based in fact. None of it's based in the law. Senator Blumenthal. Trump Jr. Potentially it was a violation of the Espionage Act. Well, that'll work on when you have a bunch of actors reading teleprompters and not journalists. And I don't care what the hell channel you're watching, from Fox to MSNBC to CNN. They're all a bunch of numbskulls. For God's sakes, at least Fox, put them behind a desk or put some clothes on these women. Sometimes I'm watching Fox and I feel like I'm 12 years old trying to watch Playboy through the squiggly lines again. It's ridiculous. It's despicable. And they'll bring it up as if it's so, as if it's an actual reasonable conversation. But it doesn't work with me. Why doesn't it work with me? I've read the Espionage Act. This is not espionage. This is not treason. Look at the past people who have been charged and punished for it. In fact, the more you read that Espionage Act and treason law, the more you start thinking about Hillary, not Donald Trump, and certainly not Donald Trump Jr. It's nonsense. But going back to what I say is the root of the problem, because you're still ingesting it, even though you get it. Oh, they're biased. They're not fact-based. This is all inference. This is not sourced. This is false narrative. This is fake news. But you're still ingesting it. So whether you think smoking kills or it doesn't kill, do you think if you keep smoking 50, 60 years, you might have the same outcome? I often use my brother as an example. I'm proud of my brother. He's one of the foremost authorities on rare and collectible coins, in addition to being a gold expert. You know how much time he spends on poor condition coins and studying them? 0. Do you know how much time he spends on common coins? 0. Do you know how much time he spends looking at counterfeit coins? 0. He spends all his time studying the real thing. Mint condition. Only the rarest. And by knowing the rarest, he knows the unrare when he sees it, because it's not the rarest. He knows what non-mint is when he sees it, because he knows mint. You see, you got to first know the truth to detect a lie. You have no discernment if you have no wisdom. You have no fact-checking if you don't know first the facts. So how do we get an ignorant, apathetic American people to do the job now that the press and journalists are refusing to do? And what do you think the outcome of that is? Long after Trump's gone. I'll tell you the scariest thing about today's show is one of the people I respect least on planet Earth. Notice I didn't say hate because I don't hate anybody. Oh, I try, but then I get convicted. The next thing you know, I'm the one asking for forgiveness. But one of the people I respect least on planet Earth, Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom and I, as you'll find out in sound next hour, come the closest to ever agreeing for the first time in life. It's a scary portion of today's show. But even he gets it. If you think this is all Trump, or if you think this is all biased media, you're missing it. And there's things that are going to keep going and keep happening, and consequence of things that are happening long after they're gone. I got to, at some point, get you to a solution and offer you a solution. That's a difficult thing for me because I don't just understand these things. I'm a student of history, and I know things that come. So the more I see the future, the more difficult it is for me to blow smoke up your skirt of hope. But there is hope. But I think at some point, if there's any good, any silver lining that can come from all of this, and I don't think America's learned this lesson yet. I don't even know how many people other than me and Dr. Savage ever bring it up. I know Dr. Savage probably uses far more intelligent and eloquent words than I. You don't have a Trump problem. Trump's got a problem because perception can be reality and it clouds, and it does exactly what the Democrats are strategizing it to do. It stymies him. And that's their only play. That's their only goal. But it's a game of distraction, a game of inference, a game of bias. It's a game of false narratives and fake journalists, because journalism and reason is dead. But journalism and reason will be dead even after Trump's gone. And the left has to deal with that, and so does the right. And I think the only solution is to go backwards and look you in the eye and say, if our founding fathers were depending on a moral people, then a big part of the solution is America needs to pick its God once and for all. Because all gods are not the same and they matter. And you better darn well start living what you believe, because saying you believe it and living a life that is counter to what you say you believe is getting us nowhere in the terms of credibility. So we need to become the moral people we were intended to be. We've got to re-engage as citizens. You better understand what self-governance is, personal responsibility, the difference between opportunity and entitlement, and you better be willing to sacrifice anything to live it. And your founding fathers knew you needed freedom of the press because that was the only way to keep you informed and keep elected officials in check, which is the other big part of your job we've been ignoring. We'll have a short segment when we come back, and I'll explain exactly what I mean by that. And then we'll get into all of the chaos in the news today and accusations. Because after all, it's just another day in the age of no reason. I'm Michael Del Giorno, and for Dr. Savage on the Savage Nation, 855-400-SAVAGE.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
"55 minutes into the Savage Nation and the Michael Savage Show." I'm Michael Del Giorno. And what's the point of my first 55 minutes? You get it. It's a war against Trump. The media doesn't like Clinton didn't win. They reject our ideology, Trump's ideology. They'll do anything to stop him, anything to distract him, anything to stymie him. You get that. But it's working, and it's working more than you think. And the reason it is, you haven't identified anything more than a symptom. You haven't identified the disease. This is not fake news. This is false narrative with fake anchors, actors. And the solution is stop ingesting it. Demand objective, fact-based, sourced, unbiased news. Reject the actors and demand real anchors. And the next stop is to educate yourself first. You got to know something authentic to sniff out a fraud. We got about 6 frauds today that make up all 6 top stories as we continue on the Savage Nation. And it takes me an hour to preface all this because I don't want the dog wagging me either. And I certainly sure as heck don't want to be the tail. More in a moment.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
Welcome back into the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno, honored as always to be filling in for Dr. Savage. He'll be back tomorrow. Get the latest headlines, subscribe to the Savage newsletter just as I have at michaelsavage.com. And don't forget to get your copy if you haven't yet. Trump's War, His Battle for America. More important now than ever, and it shows you that Dr. Savage knew it was coming. We're kind of going beyond just that simple understanding of a war, because that's really where we're at. You know, everybody listening to this show probably gets it. Media's biased. They hate Trump, and you're ignoring it. But your members of Congress are not necessarily. The American people are growing weary. It is working a little bit better than you think. And so we're kind of exploring. I think one of the things to make a difference. Now, Craig is on the line from Tampa, and I think he brings up a very good starting point for our conversation as it moves forward. So let's bring in Craig, listening on WFTW in, I believe that's Tampa, isn't it, Craig?
It's Fort Walton Beach, Florida.
Fort Walton. But go ahead.
The gloves should come off. They've gone after Trump's son. I would like to see Trump go ahead and appoint a special prosecutor to look into Bill and Hillary, look at all the money they've made while they from him being president, and and they start talking about treason. I'd like to see them appoint a prosecutor, look into why we gave nuclear fusion technology to North Korea several years ago. Nobody remembers that. They did it in the Clinton administration. And also, they sold supercomputer technology to China, which, that allows them to have a better anti-missile defense and better jets and tanks and everything else. But I think the gloves need to come off. And I also think that Trump should appoint maybe Rudy Giuliani, and I'd like to see him go ahead and get that started as soon as possible, just because they falsely accused him shouldn't stop him from going ahead and doing what's right and getting rid of these people. Put the pressure on them for a while and see what happens.
In other words, go on the offensive yourself. All right, 2 can play the game is what you're saying, Craig. I appreciate that. There are some looking at their radio right now and saying, but Hillary didn't win. Hillary is not a sitting president. Hillary is irrelevant. So playing that game, the media just won't the media will ignore that, just like Trump, when he does ignore the media and isn't tweeting up a storm, and I'm with Dr. Savage on that. He needs to stop the tweeting. In fact, it's interesting. I do have to take a stance with the left against Trump today on tweeting, because if you're going to tell the American people that there's no such thing as real news, and you're right, I call it false narrative and an agenda with fake anchors, actors. But if you're going to tell the American people, I'm not going to use my Oval Office, I'm not going to use news conferences or addresses, or interviews, I'm going to communicate directly with the American people through Twitter, and that's your justification for your good tweets, even your bad tweets, then you can't tell anybody they can or cannot see him or cannot comment. He's actually wrong there. He's made his bed and created something I can't agree with. And if you don't like it, go back to interviews. As frustrating as it is, you're dealing with actors, not anchors, and legs and empty men in suits, but that's what you got. Or you got to open it up to everybody. You can't have it both ways. But I like where you're headed with that, because there are some things that Trump could do differently. Just like I'm going to focus a lot on what we can do differently. I think the first thing we need to do is identify this is not fake news. This is more than just a war against Trump. It is those things. Those are real symptoms, but that's not the disease. The disease is false narrative and fake anchors. The real disease is this is the death. This is the consequence of an immoral nation. This is a consequence of the death of journalism and the death of reason. So at some point, you do have to identify it properly because you're going to be stuck with this long after Trump is gone. And the first thing I used was an analogy to say, stop ingesting it. Now, I will tell you, when I started in radio, in talk radio, well, my gosh, going on 30 years ago, but for the better part of 25 of those 30 years in talk radio, I was making two big points, very similar to Dr. Savage, who would come along with Language, Borders, and Cultures, but I was saying there is such a thing as right and wrong. And it's not enough to know what's right. It's not enough to believe in what's right. You got to live it. You got to act it. You got to do something. Things are changed. Things are influenced. Things are impacted with action. I can stare at you across the room and see you're starving, but if I don't get up and give you something to eat, you're still starving. I haven't changed anything. So standing up for what's right was living what you believe. First acknowledging that we've abandoned absolute truth, abandoned God, and we got to get back in right standing and right living. And then actually do it, not just believe it. Then the other half of that was exposing media bias. Well, here's the tragedy. I don't have to teach bias anymore. Everybody knows the media is biased, but you're still ingesting it. That's the danger. I can tell you this is killing you, but if you keep eating it, it really doesn't become much more than a symptom to say, are you failing because you... There are people, by the way, lawsuits that still have... How the hell do you think all that stuff got on the side of a cigarette pack? People suing, I didn't know tobacco would kill me. And it's still happening today. You think, it's 2017. If you don't know tobacco kills, you're a moron. You're killing me. So we fail in life because we don't do it to know. We don't know what to do, or we fail in life mostly because we don't do what we know. We have got to identify this, and we've got to stop ingesting it. That's number one. We got to demand objective, fact-based, sourced, unbiased news with real anchors, not actors. Yes, there's things Trump can do differently. The other thing we can do is educate ourselves. But at some point, and it doesn't matter if you do, they'll continue to ignore it. I mean, that's what Donald Trump Jr. was trying to do on Hannity. That's what he's been doing from the beginning. Listen, I thought this person, had some material. Some material that we could use. Just your typical campaign, opposition research. Heck, you have this in state house races. You have this in school board meeting races. But, I mean, how you can today, just to show you how crazy today is, Senator Blumenthal, Donald Trump Jr., potentially violated the Espionage Act. He is guilty of treason. Wasserman Schultz, guilty of collusion. Adam Schiff. This is a violation of his oath of citizenship. I almost can't wait to wake up till tomorrow to see what they accuse him of next. And I'll clue you in on this, because I met him. Donald Trump Jr., please take this the way it's meant, is such a better version. Such a much more impressive version of his father than you can imagine. Why, he's Donald Trump Sr. without the divorces. He's Donald Trump Sr. with charisma, with intelligence, with eloquence. Oh, don't think for a minute they're not extra loving this particular wave, because it might be destroying the next or a couple of presidents from now of the United States. I spent a day with Donald Trump Jr. You know what my reaction? I turned to my wife and I said, the wrong Trump's running, but I'm going to vote for Dad. Some of this is to distract, and there certainly is a double standard. I mean, if, in fact, Donald Trump Jr. is guilty of treason and espionage, or violating his oath of citizenship, or collusion, where do we stand with Hillary? Where do we stand with virtually all these people making these accusations? I mean, you would have to at least be honest with both, right? if the disinformation that came from a Russian-fed dossier by way of a former British intelligence agent, Christopher Steele, and made the rounds to everybody, and they're still using as talking points, and quite frankly, I guess it's still at the root of this whole inference, isn't that treason? Isn't that espionage? Isn't that a violation of oath of citizenship? How does that get to be? Oh, that was just, opposition research. And Trump's Jr.'s wasn't. In fact, they used theirs. Trump Jr. didn't even get any. I'm not saying it's a great PR defense, but, the fact of the matter is she didn't have anything. She duped him. She wanted to talk about adoption laws. But how do we ignore the Christopher Steele, Russian-fed dossier, straight from Moscow, not by way of an attorney who has no association with the Kremlin, and they're doing the charts all over the CNN website. I'm telling you, these people watch too much House of Cards. They really do. They've gone cuckoo, Fran and Ollie. But the same Democrats condemning the Russians for interference based loosely on this have no condemnation for themselves, for Hillary, or their party, or even Debbie Wasserman Schultz, of all people, to talk to us about what or what is not collusion. There's a reason she's not the DNC chair. She was in cahoots rigging her primary for Hillary over Bernie and feeding Hillary debate questions. Just to prove to you that the media was corrupt throughout the election. I said on election night, the most significant thing to come from this election over the referendum and an outsider winning is the death of journalism and the death of cable news credibility. Isn't that part of the chaos we're playing? And your ultimate safeguard is to feed yourself. If you can't trust ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, NPR, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, or anybody, and I don't trust any of them, I do believe, like Michael Savage has often said, talk radio is a last bastion of truth. It really is. I thank God for it daily. Not just that I make my living in it, but that we have it. But in a sea of information and in a sea of voices filled with actors and liars, manipulators, distorters, and deceivers, your only hope is to know this stuff yourself. I say this all the time when I speak to Christians. Most Christians, sadly, will spend their entire life and never get rhema, revelation, directly from God. They will never eat it. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God, and his word is your eternal food, as Jesus described it. They'll never eat for themselves. And two things happen. They're undernourished, underzealous, because all they get is what their pastor has digested and thrown back up into their mouth. And ain't no way to eat fine food, let alone eternal food. And no wonder they're spiritually malnutrition, malnourished. And they lack genuine passion because they don't have the real relationship. They don't have the authentic revelation. They didn't learn it for themselves. Heck, we do that in school today. We don't teach kids how to learn. We spend 2-3 weeks teaching them and preparing them for a test. Well, that's great for the test results and for their teachers' salaries or bonuses, but these kids don't know how to learn. That's the value. That's the whole point of school, to teach you how to learn. Because you should never stop learning. You got to eat this stuff and know this stuff for yourself. If some moron, even if he's a senator, is going to tell you that the Espionage Act is this and Donald Trump Jr. violated it, and you've never read the Espionage Act, well, you're dupable. And these actors, not anchors, and this false narrative and not true journalism, they bring it up like it's fact, and then they all sit around and discuss it. And we're all the worse for it. Can I do one segment on what is real news today? Good, because I'm doing it next on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Welcome to the age of no reason, as they would say on House of Cards. I'm Michael Del Giorno, in for Dr. Savage on the Savage Nation. Our phone number, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. I hope that Donald Trump Jr. isn't blindfolded and executed by morning the way the Democrats' allegations are flying. I do want to take this one short segment, and then we'll do all calls coming up. But this one short segment to talk about a real news story that is being ignored. And that's probably does a lot to explain the timing of all of this Donald Trump Jr. release and distraction. After all, this alleged meeting happened a long time ago. And that is, I always say behind every headline is a story, and then behind every story there's so much to talk about. But in this particular case on FoxNews.com, the headline says it all. FBI document dump, and it reveals secrets of Clinton's probe as new director nominee faces the Senate. So some 42 pages of highly redacted documents from the FBI's criminal investigation into Hillary Clinton's mishandling of highly classified materials paint a picture of a serious but yet very flawed investigation. Isn't it interesting? Maybe before this is all done, if we take the long, hard look we should have in the first place, this guy is a lot more Comey and competent, as Donald Trump said, than we realized. And this was more collusion and corruption than we thought. The materials, all part of the probe dubbed mid-year exam, included several documents designated as grand jury material, indicating the potential of seriousness of the investigation that would ultimately, of course, be ended unprecedentedly by the FBI director. In other words, he was investigating and not well, and then he made the prosecutorial conclusion that was never his to make. And maybe that had something to do with a little visit on a tarmac between William Jefferson Clinton and the Attorney General. But anyway, getting back to this, and it centers over the phones. I only got like a minute and 20 seconds, so this is going to be very, very rushed. But we see in the back and forth subpoena responses with Kathleen Turner, the high-priced Washington, D.C. attorney, that they were requesting her BlackBerries and her phones and her iPads. And then they get back to her and they say, well, we can get you her Apple iPad and 2 of her BlackBerries. And then when they arrive, the SIM cards are gone, the SD cards are removed. There were some 13 mobile devices identified by the FBI as potentially using ClintonEmail.com. Now, that's the server she claimed was set up for the former president when it was set up for her. And it wasn't protected. It was sitting in the bathroom of a condo in Colorado. And most security experts would say it was about as safe as your average Gmail account. So Comey, who was investigating Hillary for playing loose with top secret unsecured servers and emails, turns out to be sharing top secret information. And then most of these devices were wiped clean or beaten with a hammer. Well, we wouldn't want to talk about that today. There's too much about Donald Trump Jr. to cover, of course. Next on the Savage Nation, along with your calls.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Michael Del Giorno, proud, honored once again to be filling in for Dr. Savage. Welcome into the Savage Nation. Phone number 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282, which is where we find Claire, listening on WABC in New York. Claire, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Hi, thank you. I want to ask you a question. If a judge lets a murderer, killer go free, and he goes out and kills someone else, does he have think mentally that, look, the judge let me go, I can go do it again? That's what they're doing over and over again. They let Hillary Comey indicted her unofficially on television for everyone to see. And whoever believes in this is not just Democrats, because there are a lot of, I'm not a Republican, there are a lot of honest Democrats, Republicans, and see what's going on, and it's all a cover to keep her from being indicted, which they have all the evidence on her. This is not, somebody saw somebody or somebody said something. This is all official evidence. What is going on in this country?
Well, it's like being pardoned without getting the pardon, isn't it? Appreciate the call, Claire. I think, to some point, it's important to get to the bottom of this stuff. Why? Because every court case, to Claire's point, well, one, you're seeking justice, right? and facts matter, and evidence matters, and witness testimony matters. Why? Because you want to get the right guy, and you want to prove beyond a reasonable doubt if it's criminal, and then if it's civil, it's not quite the same burden. But you want justice. Doesn't bring the victim back to life, but at least there's justice. But don't forget that criminal trials are also about deterrence. There's a reason we call it law and order. If we, and I know this is going to sound like I'm keep coming back. This is the analogies I have because this is my worldview. But let me tell you something. If I can watch a nation turn its back on God with eternal consequences, it's a very short walk to turn your back on your republic for a nation's consequence. If you'll apply moral relativism and roll the dice with eternity, you'll play legal relativism too. And it's much easier. And that's what it is. You see, I would take all of them more seriously if they were at least genuine. You can't be this appalled over a meeting that produced nothing with the son of a presidential candidate and have any credibility with me and not be equally outraged over Bill Clinton on a tarmac with the attorney general or Hillary Clinton wiping clean phones, lying after lie, or botched investigations or FBI investigations that are calling off grand juries or any prosecutorial action. I mean, if you believe in justice, if you believe in deterrence, if you believe in order, if you believe in our republic, after all, it's a government of laws, you would be outraged over anyone. We don't do that. The left plays its games. Tragically, the right plays its games. Mark, listening on KSFO in San Francisco. Mark going twice.
Okay.
There he is.
It's good for him. Okay. Saul Alinsky's book. Listen, Hillary Clinton's hero is Saul Alinsky. That's treason to like Saul Alinsky. What Donald Trump did was good. I mean, Donald Trump Jr. I'm glad he went to the Soviet Union. I'm glad that, I don't know what they found on her, but, I mean, we've already found plenty on her. What are they talking about? What are these Democrats talking about? Look, the Democrats are worse than the Muslim terrorists, for crying out loud. The gun.
Well, I won't go that far. I will say this. Thanks for the... Thanks, Mark, you are worth the wait, let me tell you. No, I mean, it matters. Look, everyone does opposition research. And everyone would listen to anybody. Look, I think Donald Trump Jr. is telling the truth. His father's running for president. He was very active in the campaign. I mean, if we could go back to April before the presidential election, I would say the more Ivanka and Donald Jr. were talking, the better. He was far more articulate than his father. Let me say something while I'm doing a national show. I spent hours with Donald Trump Jr. This guy, after it was all over, I went, okay. And I even asked him off the air, and he said, oh, no, my father wanted to run for president. No, my father gets these issues. Because I kept looking at him going, are you the instigator of this? Donald Trump Jr. knows every issue inside and out. Brilliant, articulate, charismatic, passionate. The other thing that struck me that you should know is I really believe, and I know this sounds strange coming from, speaking of Donald Trump, who had that audio from a bus or has had several divorces, but I'm telling you something. I think I'm more God, family, country. Donald Trump is family, business, country. But let me tell you something. The Trumps are authentically motivated on restoring the American family. It really is what drives them. And for Donald Trump Jr., he is exactly what he appears. In his father's business, prioritizing his marriage, prioritizing fatherhood, and really gets these issues and cares about them. I mean, if nothing else, like his father, to honestly create prosperity for all, but to get rid of the hindrances to his business, which is government meddling and interfering. The guy strikes me, unlike Hillary Clinton, very truthful, very trustworthy. But there's not a campaign. I don't care if it's a state house, a U.S. congressional house, or as I jokingly said earlier, a school board election. Everybody likes opposition research, and everyone will go sit and listen. But Donald Trump Jr. would say to you, listen, I mean, I'm in the midst of this campaign and we're hearing all these allegations that Hillary's been doing this, Hillary doing that. I don't know what's real, what isn't. And here's a person that claims to have some kind of proof and fact. Of course I'm going to go hear it. And then when he gets there, she's wanting to talk Russian adoption laws. And it ended right there because he basically said, look, my father's a private citizen. You need to talk to somebody that holds an office or to my father if he ever wins the office. And there was nobody in April of that year that thought he had a chance of beating Hillary anyway. Now, I could light you up with Donald Trump Jr. quotes, and we have several. Cut 4, cut 5, cut 3. I think this is exactly what it looks like. And there's not an American that doesn't know this goes on. But I would take all of them serious if they would at least say the same thing. You know what? This is despicable. I mean, if you're going to accuse Donald Trump Jr. of treason, why aren't you accusing Hillary Clinton? Adam Schiff of California. Harry Reid. All the people that have quoted this Russian-fed dossier straight from the Kremlin by way of Christopher Steele. But I'm not going to take you seriously until you at least do that. But the game that they're winning, I think what Michael has been trying to teach you in the past couple of days, none of this is real, none of this is legal, none of this is treason, none of this is coercion, none of this is proof of anything. But it is a PR nightmare because they're playing a game of clouding. They're playing a game of vilifying and stymieing. And that's why the most troubled things I'm reading are Republican members of Congress, not just your usual establishment traitors, but members of Congress saying, this is keeping us from getting anything done. See, that's what I worry about. In time, if we all continue to ingest this, we're going to all get equally sick. Now, I want to, defend Donald Trump to my dying breath. But then he does enough things to hack me off, too. I wish he'd stop freaking tweeting and act like a president. That would help me a lot. And I got Mike Pence waiting in the wings, and I think he'll be a fine president. So, I mean, you could see how this strategy could work better than you think. And it is designed to distract, to stymie, and to frustrate and eventually wear us out. And at some point, this pendulum has to swing and change. And we got to stop ingesting it. Now, I can look you in the eye before Almighty God, who's looking down at me right now, and tell you, I don't watch CNN, I don't watch MSNBC, and I don't watch Fox News. I don't trust one more than the other. I find them all to be a bunch of teleprompter-reading actors. There's not a journalist among them. And they have very little analysm that I desperately crave, and rarely have fact and sourcing that I trust. But at some point, we've got to stop ingesting it and demand objective, fact-based, sourced, unbiased reporting. Because I don't think the American people know the difference between a false narrative, fake news, and real news. Kathy's listening on Cliff in Dallas. Kathy, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Oh, thank you. I would like to see the Clintons investigated, too. I agree with the earlier caller, and for two reasons. One is the public really needs to be reminded of what real crime looks like. I mean, basically, what happened to Trump Jr. was either it was a setup or he was just doing the news media's job anyway. And the second reason is justice still needs to be served. I mean, the Haitians still need their earthquake money. There's a lot of reparations that they need to do. And that's all I got to say.
No, I would just add, I think you're on. I mean, Kathy, I love what you're saying. I would just view it. I think it's probably most important to do it because the Clinton Foundation continues. Not that Hillary has any kind of political future. I think a lot of this, and I might just be suspicious because I was impressed. By the way, thank you for the call. I might be just suspicious because I was so impressed with Donald Trump Jr. I think a lot of this is wounding him. There's a lot of people that met Donald Trump Jr. on the campaign trail. And they're thinking, if Donald Trump can get elected, let me tell you something, Donald Trump Jr. can easily get elected. He's the real deal. He's smarter than any of these politicians. He gets the issues inside and out, knows how to explain them. I mean, they might be that, forward thinking. I don't know. But in the case of Hillary, yeah, there's justice. Yeah, there's deterrence. And yeah, there's the Clinton Foundation. And it still does exist. So there's many reasons to continue that. It just goes far beyond just, go on the offensive. Because then you're just playing the same game they are. The goal is to get back to sealing the border, securing it, enforcing our laws. Hey, I got news for you. Go beyond fixing illegal immigration and fix legal immigration, because it's as broke as illegal immigration. You still have entitlements and promises that you can't keep. They're unsustainable. You still have a broken healthcare system, and until you kill it and rebirth a real solution, you're still ingesting it, and it's broke, and it's hurting the economy, and you haven't gotten to tax cuts yet. But I don't think you can look and blame Donald Trump. Donald Trump has restored our credibility in the world from the national security, diplomacy, and foreign policy and military perspective. He did cut regulations. He tried to repeal and replace Obamacare. That's the legislative body and branch's job, and they haven't gotten it done. He vowed to destroy ISIS. They just got destroyed in Mosul, and they're on the run. He still has the plans to talk to Mexico. The border is being architected now. It's going to be built, and it remains to see who's going to pay for it. And yet, even if we, the American people, pay for it, if it's a part about being a sovereign nation and securing our borders, and we get a say in who comes and who doesn't, and who stays and who doesn't, he's doing everything he can. So what's holding him back? Well, these tactics that we've described for 2 hours, or as Dr. Savage would say, perception becomes reality, and it's starting to pay a price. All right, well, then the next question is, how do we correct this? Obviously, them doing it, us knowing what they're doing, us griping about it, is not changing the trajectory. And so I'm suggesting we're vulnerable. Our founding fathers needed us to be moral, and we're not. That's a problem. Our founding fathers valued freedom of the press in order to factually inform the electorate and hold elected people accountable. So if we have a death of journalism, that's a big problem moving forward. And I'm one of the few people that ever come out and say this on the radio. You got to stop eating this crap. Stop watching it. My mother's 75 years old. That's the only fight we have. Turn off Fox. Turn off Facebook. We got to stop ingesting it. It's poisoning us all, whether we understand it's poison or not. It's still killing us. And somebody better demand real anchors, real reporters, real facts. Now, how do you hold that accountable? Start suing their butts off. Hard to do when you're the president and a public figure, but for some of these others, it's not hard to do. It's libel and slander. Can I get one more in? We should take the break, right? All right, Lewis and Jim after the break. It's 3:48. The phone number, 855-400-7282, 400-SAVAGE. More with Michael Del Giorno in for Dr. Savage on the Savage Nation next.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Welcome back into the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno in Nashville, filling in for Dr. Savage, who will be back tomorrow. The phone number, 855-400-7282, 400-SAVAGE. Well, we got a parade of morons that I could be playing sound from, but a short segment. So let's just start this parade with our first float. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, cut 9.
There's no question that what Donald Trump Jr. agreed to do, with relish, I might add, is meet with a lawyer who he believed was affiliated with the Russian government to assist his father's campaign and collect dirt on Hillary Clinton. If that is not definition of collusion, I don't know what is.
Well, I guess the Russian-fed dossier by a former British intelligence agent, Christopher Steele, shopped, bought, and sold with unverified criminal charges against Trump. I might add, paid for by a Democratic-funded opposition research firm, Fusion GPS, with money from a Hillary Clinton backer. If that's not the definition, I mean, to me, what is laughable is Debbie Wasserman Schultz's lack of credibility. Here's a woman that's no longer the DNC chair because she got caught feeding debate questions to her candidate. Never mind how they rigged the primary with superdelegates. They actually got involved in rigging the deck for Hillary to win. Her giving us integrity lessons. Her giving us the definition of collusion. And yet not bringing up what the Democrats did. Maybe they just didn't do relish, right? Maybe they just did mustard and onions, I guess. How silly does it get? Well, Representative Adam Schiff, he thinks Donald Trump in this meeting was a violation of his oath of citizenship. I bet you Junior would love for you to take away his citizenship. You wouldn't have to pay taxes. You get free health care, food, housing subsidies. The Democrats are going to give us lessons on the oath of citizenship. The backers of anybody being here as a citizen. More coming up on the Savage Nation. Stay with us if your stomach holds up.
Savage. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
I'm Michael Del Giorno from Nashville, Tennessee. Honored to be filling in for Dr. Savage on the Savage Nation today. He's going to be back tomorrow. I want you to get the latest headlines. Subscribe to the Savage Nation newsletter the same way I did, michaelsavage.com. And don't forget to pick up a copy of Trump's War, His Battle for America, Michael's latest book, and more important than ever. Our phone number, 855-400-7282, 855-400-SAVAGE. We're going to kind of take the loons one at a time. And we did Wasserman Schultz, so let's start the show with, and this kind of feeds into my premise, that, you know, Trump is not the problem. Trump Jr. is not the problem. The wars, the media's war against Donald Trump and their inability to examine and understand and accept the outcome of an election is not the problem. No, we're dealing with false narratives and fake anchors, not fake news. We're dealing with the death of journalism and the death of reason. And we're going to have to figure this out long after Trump is gone. Serious stuff. Now, I want to give you an example of what I mean, and thank goodness for Senator Blumenthal. He gives me a wonderful teachable moment.
These emails
He's going to bring something up.
Textbook example and evidence of criminal intent. I can almost hear the closing argument to the jury using "I love it," repeating again and again. I love it. Those three words are going to haunt Donald Trump Jr. because they are a clear signal that he is looking for information, dirt on Hillary Clinton from the Russian government and expecting an agent of the Russian government to be providing it to him and having the meeting, showing and again signaling the Trump campaign is open for business.
Now, the assumption for most Americans will be there is no right or wrong. There's no difference between fact and opinion. And if a senator of the United States says this is espionage, why, he can even predict the closing argument of the trial. By the way, there's not a legal analyst that would tell you that any crimes were committed, that anybody would have anything to justify a case of criminality, let alone he's already seen the final words of the closing arguments of the case. Lisp and all, there's Senator Blumenthal telling you this is treason, this is espionage, this is a quote-unquote textbook example. Now, most Americans will just have their opinion. They'll either listen to it, they'll agree, or they'll disagree, or they'll ignore. But will anybody go read? I mean, just, you know, as I often say, you know, I have these discussions about Muhammad. You know, he really lived. There is a historical account of Muhammad's life, and he really did enslave. He really did steal. He really did slaughter. There's a reason why we have some Muslims that are doing this today. You're like, you're Islamophobic. You're a hate monger. You're a bigot. You're inciting a war. You're a warmonger. They'll go through all these things. I'm like, just go to freaking Wikipedia. How hard is that? And so I love using that example. So here is a Democrat senator who, by the way, had none of these things to say about Hillary Clinton when they got their dossier directly from the Russians. Paid for by a Clinton supporter's money for the purposes of destroying Donald Trump. But apparently what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. And this is a textbook example and evidence of criminal intent. Why, he's a treasonous, guilty of espionage. So I'm like, okay, well, let me go look. The Espionage Act of 1917 is a United States federal law passed on June 15th, 1917, shortly after the U.S. entered World War I. It's been amended numerous times over the years. It was originally found in Title 50 of the U.S. Code under war, but now is found under Title 18 under crime. It was intended to prohibit interference with military operations. I think that's probably a pretty decent guess, a far cry from what we would call opposition research. And to prevent the support of United States enemies during wartime. Well, we are in a Cold War again, a proxy war in Syria and Iran, but I wouldn't say we're at war with Russia. I also wouldn't by any stretch of the imagination call them an ally, but I don't see anything in this that would be a citizen or a high-powered or military personnel person aiding an enemy at a time of war. In 1919, the Supreme Court of the United States unanimously ruled, through Schneck versus the United States, that the act did not violate freedom of speech of those convicted under its provisions. The constitutionality of the law, its relationship to free speech, and the meaning of its language has been contested in court. Among those charged with the offenses in the past, well, you got the charming congressman and newspaper editor Victor Berger. You got labor leader and four-time Socialist Party of America candidate Eugene Debs. You got anarchist Emma Goldman, Alexander Berkman. You got former Watchtower Bible and Tract Society president Joseph Franklin Rutherford, communist Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg, Chelsea Manning. You know, we're going down the list. None of them. I mean, seriously, am I going to have this conversation? Now, I will say this for Senator Blumenthal. I'm sure he's confident that the average ignorant and apathetic American would never even go to Wikipedia and read this. And so they just, and this is what I'm talking about, factless, sourceless, just the death of journalism, the death of objective reporting. It is just attack after attack of inference, a cloud of a whisper. And so all it takes to be news, because, you know, it used to be a reporter or a journalist would say, excuse me, Senator Blumenthal, are you aware of the Espionage Act? Have you ever read it? In what way is Donald Trump Jr. involved in a military operation in this particular scenario? Doesn't this strike you more as oppositional research that just turned out to be nothing? This woman had an opposite agenda? Nobody does that anymore. He gives this quote, everybody plays it. Now, depending on who you're watching, you might hear Sean Hannity dismantle it. If you're watching somebody else, they'll go on and on about it like it's fact. But nobody will go read it for themselves. I have a dear friend, David Zanotti. He runs but American Policy Roundtable is his nonprofit. And he is a great student of history. And people try this nonsense on him all the time. The difference is he's read the original documents. He studied the original documents. I know my opening monologue seemed to go on and on and on, but I'm telling you, I'm giving you the real disease here. Stop focusing on the symptoms. No, Senator, this is not treason. This is not espionage. This is simply what anybody in politics would call opposition research. And some sources have it and some don't. I mean, at the end of the day, it really is fun to hold up this great example, which I think is designed to cloud us and distract us from the Comey and the document dump of the FBI bungled investigation and the obstruction of justice proof of Hillary Clinton. They don't want you talking about that, so you're talking about this. So we're kind of playing their game. I'll admit that. But you got to see the difference. I mean, if this is Donald Trump being approached, this person has something. All right, I'll go listen. I'm hearing a lot of stuff. I don't know what's true. If they've got something of hard evidence that'll help us, sure, I'll go listen. And then he gets there, and she's an attorney wanting to talk adoption laws. Well, that's the end of the meeting. And yet, as I keep bringing up, the Russian-fed dossier by the former British intelligence agent Christopher Steele that contained unverified criminal charges against Donald Trump. So they paid for it with the Hillary Clinton backers' money through Fusion GPS, dealing directly with the Russian military. I mean, Junior's got this attorney. She had nothing to do with the Russian government. So, you often get these people come forward with oppositional research. Some is true, some is not true. In the case of Junior, some never produces anything. But they sought him. He didn't seek them, and it certainly wasn't military in orientation, and it certainly wasn't aiding an enemy at a time of war, and it certainly wasn't to the detriment of the United States government. It was oppositional research in a presidential race. And the other side did it, and is still doing it. In fact, this whole conversation goes back to that in its roots. Now, you might say, well, what about the hacker? Yeah, well, the hacker, again, I used to say this last year and people thought I was crazy. I'm looking less crazy every day. I said the person of the year should not be Donald Trump, should not be this person, that. The person of the year last year, 2016, should have been the hacker. Because the only real things we got, the only real facts and real sourcing and real news had to be hacked. Because our journalists had become hacks. Partisan, bias, fake hacks. But what did the hackers reveal? Well, listen, I would have loved to have been a reporter or a breaking Woodward and Bernstein, put him on the map, newspaper guy. But it turned out to be a hacker. Now, am I appalled at how I got the information? Or am I appalled at what the information was? And it was true. They really did rig the Democratic primary. They really were feeding Hillary questions. They really were stalling, obstructing justice, and blocking clear collusion, clear obstruction of justice, clear, quite frankly, espionage by playing loose with top secret, unprotected servers and documents and devices. So this stuff comes out either through hackers or it comes out through oppositional research, and maybe it's appalling that this came from a lawyer and this came straight from the Kremlin or this came from a hacker. But the difference is the Republicans didn't do anything the Democrats didn't already do. And theirs was true. The Trump stuff was false. And the Junior stuff produced nothing. That doesn't stop a senator from calling it treason. A violation of an Espionage Act that he counts on you not even going to Wikipedia and reading. Unfortunately, I got more morons to come on the Savage Nation next.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
This is the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno from Nashville, Tennessee, in for Dr. Savage. He'll be back tomorrow. Honored to fill in as always and talk to you at 855-400-7282. 855-400-SAVAGE is the number to Luis and WABC in New York. Welcome to the Savage Nation.
Hello.
Hello, Luis.
I want to make a couple of positive points about President Trump's Twitter use. But first,
see, Dad and I were on WTIX, but my dad was on WWL after I went to D.C. long after.
Okay.
But that's a small world. Good to meet you.
It is, and having the courage to fill in for Dr. Savage. And you're right about turning off the Facebook, the Fox, and the CNNs of the world. It's very liberating not to listen to him and then not have to pay for television. But President Trump does not get a fair shake from the media, basically. And if he did not have Twitter to go around him, through him, over him, and around him, he would not be able to get his point out. So I think that he should use it because part of his job as president is to communicate with the American people.
I appreciate that, and that's certainly his perspective. Listen, you're not going to deal with real journalists. You're not going to deal with objective reporting. But you are the president of the United States. And if you call a news conference, you have the ability to make your case. You do have the bully pulpit. Now, the only thing I would communicate to the president is, now, and this takes a little bit of objectivity. Let's face it. I think you have to be honest, even though you love and support the president and you love the things that he's done. I'll take the Dow today over pre-election day. I like the regulation reform that we've done. I'm looking forward to the tax reform. I'm looking forward to the border being secured and the wall being built. We had to go all over the Supreme Court to get our sensible, common sense national security travel ban. This president's gotten a lot done. But he is hit and miss on tweets. And I only have a minute, but I'll zoom in on the CNN one. If the president shuts his mouth and just has a nice weekend, CNN was hanging itself. And it would have led to its chairman resigning by Sunday if he doesn't jump in. Now, I think that whole thing was ridiculous. I mean, a meme, a video, a GIF video, or whatever you call it. And all it was footage of Trump doing to McMahon, and it superimposed the CNN. And then what CNN did after that to threaten, to basically extort and bribe. I mean, that guy was given apologies like he was facing a firing squad. And then the story ends with, but we'll hang on to his name in case he doesn't stay repentant. That guy apologized, deleted all his past posts, deleted his account, vowed to never speak again. I mean, you want to talk about, in the name of the First Amendment, CNN silencing somebody for doing something stupid and not even wrong. Now, whether you thought it was funny or not, it was certainly not wrong. I mean, CNN could not, I always use this expression, I almost have to stop and explain it. I had a gorgeous Labrador Retriever from one of the best breeders. He was nothing like his sister Cleo, which was the most brilliant athletic dog I ever had. His name was Cole, and we called him Jughead because he was just stupid. He was gorgeous, but he was stupid. And you'd go to feed him, and he'd knock the food over. You'd go to give him water, and he'd step in it and spill it. But CNN was doing that all weekend long, and then Trump does that retweet, and they jump on it. He gives them the ammunition sometimes. He gives them the distraction sometimes. Now, here's the bottom line. He doesn't bat 1,000 with his tweets. And most of them are harmless, and most of them are defendable, but some of them are not. And I just wish he wouldn't. And he is the president of the United States, and he can make his case. He can call a news conference. He can do interviews, and he does them well. So I don't buy this that he has to tweet. There's no other way to reach the American people. And I got news for you. He doesn't need to reach me and you. He's got a better shot than tweeting to reach the people whose minds he has to reach, the minds and hearts he has to change and convince. And quite frankly, unless he lacks the skills to do it, refute them every step of the way. If I was president of the United States, I wouldn't expect a fair shake from the media, but I'd take every opportunity, and I'd bury them as they were trying to bury me.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282.
Welcome into the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno from Music City, USA, Nashville, Tennessee, filling in for Dr. Savage. An honor to do so. He'll be back tomorrow. Get the latest headlines. Subscribe to the Savage Nation newsletter, just as I have, at michaelsavage.com. And don't forget to pick up a copy of his prophetic book, Trump's War, His Battle for America. We've kind of outlined some of the nonsense, and I know I spent about an hour explaining why I don't normally watch this stuff, ingest this stuff, or pay attention to this stuff. But I can't fill in for Michael and not do that. But it's the end of the age of reason, as they would say on House of Cards. And I have been watching that show. But it really is, and the death of journalism. And so today, everybody is pouncing on Donald Trump. As we heard, Democrat Senator Blumenthal basically tried to accuse Donald Trump Jr. of espionage, which, you know, I guess go for it and hope nobody Wikipedia's what the Espionage Act of 1917 was. But it's a ridiculous claim, and we disproved that. Then we had Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Boy, does she have them bigger than a giraffe. She's going to give us lessons on collusion. The witness has no credibility, and one might ask Debbie, could you explain to us why you're not the chair of the DNC anymore? But, you know, she's giving us the definition of collusion. And by the way, it only applies to Junior, and it doesn't apply to Hillary. So the goose and the gander never meet. Let's go to our final moron, Representative Adam Schiff, who, of course, can't make the case of collusion, can't make the case of espionage, so he's going to go ahead and throw citizenship at you.
It is absolutely not only a breach of norms, but a breach of civic responsibility to the country. If you get approached by a foreign government offering to interfere in a presidential election, you go to the FBI. You report it. That's what a decent citizen would do. And I don't want to see us continue to lower the bar here and say the only question is whether this is illegal. This was unethical. It was, I think, in violation of the oaths of citizenship to willingly solicit, receive, encourage foreign intervention in our elections.
Don't you love getting lectures on citizenship from the Democrats that don't believe in it? I want to do one more cut, and it's legal analyst Tobin at CNN, so that'd be cut 12. Let's do that. We'll wrap up the cuts.
It's certainly very, very serious, but it's also important to say, you know, there is a long way to go, and these emails in and of themselves are not proof of any crimes. Two things to think about. One is it is a crime for campaign officials to solicit anything of value from a foreign government. So the question is, was anything solicited here of value?
Well, I guess if he'd have made a trade, if my father gets elected, we will change these adoption laws concerning Russia and the United States. Now, hand over the pictures of, you know, Hillary wearing a dress, you know, or, you know, give me cash and I will perpetuate this information. I mean, there was nothing of the sorts. Now, I think if we learned anything from the Veritas video, I'm right. The disease that we're really suffering from is the death of journalism. We don't have anchors, we have actors. We have agendas. Facts don't matter, sources don't matter, there's no objective reporting. This is all a theatrical game. That's why when you're watching House of Cards, whether it's Fox, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, whoever's being portrayed, and Rachel Maddow was the best, they're doing their shtick in a fake television show with the same passion and style that they do every night with the news, because it's an act. But it's a sad joke. Fake acres. The death of journalism, the death of reason. And anybody can say anything. And so if we learned anything from the Veritas video was, hey, good job on the climate treaty. Now let's get back to the whole Russian thing. And then everybody caught on tape, including Banjo, and saying there's nothing to this, but it's good for ratings, and we're going to keep it going, and it keeps the president distracted. Which really kind of gets to, I know a story that if Michael were here today, he would have majored in. And again, as I always say, behind every headline is a story, and behind every story there's so much to talk about. You should know this story comes from Philip Rucker and Ashley Parker at the Washington Post. I actually think this entire opposition is probably being run by Barack Obama a mile or so from the White House, and clearly his joint chiefs of staff are CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, and others. So take this all with a grain of salt. And by the way, don't look for any sourcing here or really any fact. It's always just inference. That's all that's necessary for their game of whisper, their game of distraction. President Trump, who has been hidden from public view. I'm telling you, I'm thoroughly convinced these people all watch too much House of Cards. That's right. He's up in the kitchen. I'm sure Melania's really running everything. There's got to be a Doug somewhere pushing people in front of subways. But he's hiding. Hidden from public view since returning from last weekend, his divisive, look at that, it's dripping, divisive international summit. Well, divisive for you because he doesn't share your sabotage for our economy for a 1 degree myth, or divisive to globalists who would like to create a one world government, a one world think, and a one world control. And they would love to de-develop us. They would love to eliminate all economic superpowers. They would love to eliminate any military superpowers for the purposes of control. I guess divisive for them. But apparently he's enraged that the Russian cloud is still hanging over his well, that Russian cloud ain't going to go anywhere. The country will have to rise up. When MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News all go to 0 in the ratings, you might get a real reporter. You might get real facts. You might get objective reporting. That's why I go back to my initial point. You get it's biased. You get it's a war. You get it's fake news, fake narrative, fake anchors. But you're still ingesting it. And so for the 30% that are believing it, they're dying. For the 70% that don't believe it but are still ingesting it, I say you're still dying too. And the empty suit, characterless, statesmanless members of Congress with R's, that's all it is an R. They don't have any scruples, principles, tenacity, initiative, or courage. They're running for the hills with these distractions. So I don't know if any of this is happening, and the bottom line is, nor does CNN, nor does the Washington Post, and nor do you. But according to the Washington Post, he's hiding. He's down in the bunker. He's in the basement. Here comes this Russian... Here comes that Russian cloud feeling again. Bam, bam. He's exasperated. And he's angry at his son. Junior could get grounded. Do you know, only the Washington Post, and I think it was... Robert's never allowed to chime in. If we were local, he would. Somebody else. Who was it? Was it Blumenthal or was it... No, it was Wasserman Schultz. His namesake. Obviously, they're all working off the same talking points. His oldest son and his namesake. As if it would have been any different if it was one of the other kids. They've been engulfed by this cloud. Even supporters of Trump Jr., who believe he faces no legal repercussions, privately acknowledge that the story is a public relations disaster. But see, that's not enough. You can't just call it a public relations disaster. No. As one outside ally called it, it's a Category 5 hurricane. At least have, the creativity to call it a Category 5 crap storm, something. Well, an outside advisor said the CNN graphic charting connections between the Trump team and the... Well, I can do 6 degrees of anything. I got news for you. My Facebook profile is me and Donald Trump Jr. There, you've got your chart. You can now link me to Putin. I can't wait to get on a horse and take my shirt off. Then to prove my point completely, while an outside advisor said a CNN graphic charting connections between Trump team and the Russians resembled the plot of the fictional Netflix series House of Cards. Yeah, that's exactly what you all have been participating too much in and watching too much in. And you're nuts, all of you. This portrait of the Trump White House under siege. Don't you love the biased writing? Well, it's based on interviews with more than a dozen West Wing officials, outside advisors and friends and associates of the president and his family, many of whom, of course, spoke under the condition of anonymity. So they could be candid. I don't trust anybody that won't put their name to something. I mean, we've had a million examples. Blumenthal, Wasserman Schultz, Representative Schiff, David Letterman, House of Cards. I think ultimately, at some point, you got to realize this isn't harmless. This isn't going away. and it's not just a cycle. I do agree with Dr. Savage that perception can be reality. Listen, I can see it so easy. I can get tired of defending Trump. I can get tired of this. Hey, if they keep at it and we keep participating with them, it can get to the point that we can't get to real repeal and real replacement of Obamacare, a real border wall, real security, real laws, border laws enforced, real tax reform. We can't get to any of that as long as he's around. It won't take long before even Trump's supporters will start saying, well, maybe we're better off with just Pence taking over. That's their goal, stymie. Just for the sake of review, I have been preaching this, filling in for Michael. I go back to right out of the mouth, brazenly, Chucky Schumer, during the confirmation process, saying we're doing a real service to America by vilifying every Trump nominee. Can you imagine that? A United States Senator who should be there to protect states' rights, who in this particular process should be there to vet nominees and confirm or reject nominees, not to just vilify them for the sake of vilification. And then he elaborates. We might force a withdrawal here or there. But even if we can't, it's all about laying the groundwork to stymie the Trump administration. You know, erase your voice, erase your vote, erase the election results, because we just don't want to accept them. Donald Trump Jr. do anything illegal? Nobody with a straight face, not even Jeffrey Tobin on CNN, where they're bought and paid for and told, keep this going for ratings, keep this going for revenue. Even he'll look in the eye and say that. But after a while, it actually does begin to stymie. It does begin to wear down, and it does begin to obstruct real progress. And I don't know what the solution is. The only thing I can think of is we have got to stop ingesting it. You can gripe about porn all you want, and Christians can gripe about porn all you want. Well, let me tell you something. A really good start would be if Christians stopped watching porn every day. You don't like biased news? Stop watching. It'll go away. Heck, I'll go so far as to tell you, I think from a programming standpoint, not to mention a cultural pendulum, there's nowhere for the Democrat Party to go but right. There's only one place for CNN to go from here and survive, and that's right. It's their only play now. Heck, we live in a world where nothing's right, nothing's wrong, anything goes, complete chaos. Why we can't even figure out that if you got a pee-pee, you go to the boys' room. If you got an innie, you go to the girls' room. And there's going to come a day in all of this chaos of rebellion and rejection of God and his ways that the only way a kid can rebel, be square, be traditional family valued, be godly. Maybe the only way to get back at your liberal, crazy parents. Which is the scariest part of the show that I saved for the closing. The person I respect least in life, Gavin Newsom, comes the closest to agreeing with me next on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
I think we only have about 2.5 minutes left. I don't know if I can do this justice. In fact, maybe I'll get rid of the clip and just give you the gist of it. I wanted to end with this, and that is a lot of discussions in Vermont about Bernie Sanders and whether or not what he has done to the Democratic Party and what he has done nationally should translate at home in Vermont. I don't think Bernie Sanders has any threat of losing his Senate seat. It could happen, but I don't think he has a threat of it. But the conversation led to such a way that his opponent says, look, this guy never should have been allowed in the Democrat Party. He's not a Democrat. He's a socialist. He has taken our party to the far left, and it brought up all kinds of interesting things in my head because there's been some major pendulums. And most pendulums are swung and broken by personality. It takes certain personalities. Now, you can go all the way back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the New Deal, Johnson's Great Society, which would have never happened had Kennedy been shot. In fact, Jack Kennedy was pulling the Democratic Party to the far right. And then it took Ronald Reagan to bring us back to the right. Now, I just don't see any personalities on the horizon that can take us and get us back to where we need to be as a country. And so the cycles will go as they go. And they're close when they say, Hillary rushed to get to the left of Bernie Sanders. And now we've got a party and a platform that we can't sell. That's why we lost the Rust Belt. See, in the midst of all of this distraction is the real reason they lost, a flawed candidate and a flawed platform. And it's not selling. Well, that's what Gavin Newsom, the former mayor of San Francisco, keeps saying. Hey, this is a losing proposition. And sooner or later, Trump's going to be gone. We got to get back to what we can do for the American people. Now, I don't have the same worldview as him, and I wouldn't do the things. That's part of their problem. All they could peddle was increase the minimum wage. Now a proven failure in Seattle as a test market. Gender equality with wages and equal access to bathrooms for transgendered. And let's, kill our economy over a 1 degree myth. I mean, they don't have anything. But it's interesting how there is some hope in that, too. We got to stop ingesting these lies. We got to demand real journalism. And then we got to educate ourselves so we know a lie when we hear it. It's funny. I wonder if the left will wake up before the right. But either way, this is very dangerous, and it goes far beyond Donald Trump. Our founding fathers were counting on it. Michael will be back tomorrow. Thanks for letting me fill in. See you soon.
Savage.